Okay, okay. Take your seats. Settle down. Settle down. Welcome to the Road to Concord 101. This class is about all things connected to the path of history leading from Mount Sinai to Lexington Green and the individual liberty and freedom of man. If you're in the wrong place, feel free to get up and go see the registrar's office about dropping this class, preferably before you meet the professor. In the event you do not already know this, your professor is Joe Bakanovic, and he has a bit of a reputation on campus. He is most definitely an acquired taste, but if you can learn to tolerate him, he will make you better at defending your position, whatever it may be. I'm T.A. Charlie. I'm here to help the professor, but more importantly, you. We encourage you to take notes, and if you have questions, feel free to call. If you'd like the number, please email us. You can also post your questions in the comments, and we'll get the professor's attention. Part of my job is to let you know a little bit about your professor. As I said earlier, the professor has that bit of a reputation on campus. Not all of it is good. Let me help explain a little with a story about how I came to be the professor's TA. I was invited to attend one of his classes. My first impression of the professor was that he was an egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all. My intent after only a few minutes of class was never to attend another class with this professor. But after class, Professor Joe came up to me and thanked me for my class participation and told me that my perspective was valuable, and he asked me to keep coming to class. This actually took me back a little. To me, he seemed inconsistent. What was I to do? I decided to continue coming to his classes. As I did, I actually started doing what he does encourage students to do. Check behind him and see if what he is teaching is actually correct. I have done this over and over again, and generally speaking, I found what he teaches to be backed by sound, valid, and rational arguments from reputable sources. When I have challenged him and provided a sound, valid, and rational argument in opposition to his current position, he immediately changed his position and thanked me for correcting him. Why do I tell you all this? Professor Joe is a little rough around the edges, especially in the way he delivers his content. But if you stick with him and listen to what he teaches and then go and check his sources, you will likely find, as I did, he will help you better understand the world around you and help you to think better and hopefully to live better. At least that is our hope. One last note. This class builds on itself. Therefore, it is important to attend class regularly. We will not always have time to go over previously covered material. If you are new, we suggest you watch our older classes. We've created playlists to help you with those things we feel are of special importance. Now, let's get started.
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, September 30th, 2025, and welcome to the Road to Concord. Charlie is playing hooky today. He's with us on the Rumble. He's watching. Charlie, I tagged you in on a game. You can go play on Facebook anytime you're ready. The intro today was talking about how I can be a little off-putting for people. At least until they get to know me a little better, and then maybe sometimes even then. Anyway. There was a post on Facebook that I should have known better, but they were equating the Latter-day Saints to Christians, to true Christians, and they're saying that it's Christian on Christian. And I know this isn't Wednesday, but just hold on, bear with me for a minute, and we'll get going. But the post was about how it's Christian on Christian crime, because other Christians were pointing out that the Mormons, Latter-day Saints, are not Christians. And apparently that's hateful. So I made the comment that they're not Christians, and it is not hateful to speak the truth, capital T truth. and that they're not Christian by the Bible's definition. Oh boy, did that lead to a whole bunch of arrows thrown my way, which they didn't stick. I'm a tanker, thick frontal armor. Arrows bounce off of steel, folks. So I just decided after a while I was going to tag out of that one, and seeing how Charlie has a history with the LDS, I tagged him into it to see if he wants to go play. But, the point of it is this. If you're espousing something that is not factual, where's the love? In allowing the lie because everybody's feelings are hurt, so you're just going to be peaceful today and not say anything and let them, grieve in their lie? Or to point out that, hey, what happened was awful and it was murder and we do feel for the families and all of that, yes. But at the same time, you're expressing or advancing a lie and trying to make yourself look good in the process by calling yourself a peacemaker and let's all kumbaya. You don't kumbaya around a lie. So where they were calling me hateful, I tried to point out to them that they were taking this tragedy and trying to make themselves out to be more than what they were. And they didn't appreciate that. That is part of what Charlie, in the intro, part of what Charlie means by the professor doesn't always present things to you in a way that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. Because the truth isn't usually all warm and fuzzy. So, with that said, a little bit of housekeeping. Tomorrow, We Who Are Lost, Worship Wednesday. Tomorrow, Charlie gives his doctoral dissertation live on air. And I'll be critiquing as he goes, which is kind of how you do your doctoral dissertation, at least in the philosophy department. He's going to be asking you, well, hey, wow. No coincidences, right, Charlie? You're going to be talking about, do you know who and what you worship? The irony. I'm sorry, folks, but, Alf, I kill me. And then Friday, bad preview last week. We're not doing a show Friday. It's a high holy day, so we're going to be afflicting our souls. Okay, today's show. I have promised you that I can go from I think, therefore I am to the 10 Commandments. And I can. And I will over the next few Tuesdays. Today we're going to start with a conversation about I think, therefore I am. Where can I get with that? All right. Before we get going on that, little disclaimer. This is still a work in progress. If I were to ever go back to college and try to get my doctorate in philosophy, this would be my thesis. I would keep working on it. It's not the only possible argument along these routes, but I do think it's the strongest. At least the strongest I've encountered, because I've looked. I haven't found any other philosophers that start with this where I'm going to start. They always start with their life. I'm going to start before that. And I have looked because I want to see what other people have done, where their work is, and will it help me, guide me, teach me? And I haven't found anybody that argues this yet. I do not doubt that they're out there. I just haven't found them yet. But my argument is not the only one. And yes, you could deny my premises. And my argument is influenced by my bias. But it's a little bit of a circular reasoning here because my bias in my argument has been influenced by the argument itself. So what does all that mean? Well, for those of you who know logic, I've set the table telling you that I know that I'm arguing the way I think. But I believe this is also right reasoning. Now, let me explain. We'll start here. I think it was Descartes. It might have been Voltaire. I think it was Descartes. I think, therefore, I am. I'd have to look that up. I'm bad with names. Y'all know that by now. What does that mean? I think, therefore, I am. Well, it means that you exist. Now, you may not exist in a bodily sense. And you may not exist in a world, and you could be a floating will in a sea of blackness that you cannot perceive. You're just a mind, kind of like that episode of Star Trek where they took Spock's brain out of his head and stuck him in that little machine, and he was just a mind. Problem was that even he could hear and speak and blah, blah, blah. But just imagine that you're just in an absolute, yes, it was Rene Descartes. Thank you. Just imagine you're in a void, blackness. You have no ears, no eyes. No body. You can't touch, perceive, smell, nothing. But you can think. You're just a disembodied mind in the middle of nothing. Well, that doesn't mean that there's nothing. It means you can't perceive it. But you think. Because you're thinking, you exist. That doesn't mean that you're going to know anything about the reality of your existence, objective reality, what it's truly like. And that's not the point. I don't care. At this point in our discussion, I don't care. All I care about is I exist. Okay. So now I exist. I don't know anything about my surroundings or how anything works, et cetera, et cetera. All thinking proves is that I exist. But I can control what I think about. I can control, I may not know a whole lot of anything because I'm going to exist in this void. I haven't seen anything, heard anything, smelt anything, but I could still think. I could be like, well, where am I? How did I get here? Who or what am I? What's my purpose? Who made me? Are there others like? I can think. I can control my questions. And my thought processes might be, let's just assume for a moment you were in a world like we are today with a body and other people. My thought processes could be influenced. Even in my void, I could say, okay, well, I can't perceive anything but except what I think. But maybe if there are other forces out there that I can't perceive, they might have influence over me. They might be able to coerce me. They might be able to incapacitate me somehow through drugs, or they might be able to deceive me, or illness if I had a body. They might be able to deceive me, but they cannot control what I think. Now, just chase a quick rabbit and pretend that I have a body now and I'm being tortured. And I'm being told, how many lights do you see? And I say 4. They go, no, there are 5. And they hit me with the juice again. Zzz. How many lights do you see? 4. Zzz. There are 5. Now how many lights do you see? 4. Zzz. There are 5. No. Well, eventually some people might decide to say there are 5 to make the pain quit. That didn't change what you're thinking. You might think to yourself, okay, there are 4. And the weaker will might actually start seeing 5, convince themselves there's 5. Now, I'm not making a value judgment of that will. It's survival technique. They want the pain to quit. I get it. I understand. There's no value judgment in that right now. I'm just saying that if you decide to do that, that was still your choice. So what I can conclude is that no other will like mine in my void, and we're going to call it a human will for the moment, no other will like mine can control what I think. My will is my own. But now thinking is not my will. Will is independent of thinking. It's something different. It's something separate. And that's why I'm going to say, just because you think, okay, so you're thinking. Thinking is the exercise of your conscious mind, of your will. Oh, no, it isn't. Your will is exercising your thinking. It's an expression of your will. And that's why I'm saying that it's not even I think, therefore I am. It's my will. That's the first primary foundation stone of human nature. Now, I know we're going to get to the idea of free will and all that stuff more next week. But a lot of people would start with, and I originally started with, I think, therefore I am, until I realized that I could, just thinking, sitting in my black void, I could come up with, oh, it's not thinking. That's not my most elementary existence. My most elementary existence is my will. Thinking is just my will in exercise. It's a part of the exercise of my will. Okay. We could get lost in that if we wanted to. Let's go back to what else. Okay. Now I know that I have my will and that thinking is an exercise of my will. One possible exercise. But what is my will? Is it intelligence? No, not necessarily. No. I might have more intelligent will than other wills or less intelligent will than other wills, or it could just be that intelligence is how well you think, how well you operate your will. So your will is not intelligence. It's not genius. It's not discipline. It's nothing like that. Your will is something that is just intrinsic. It's who you are, essentially. It's the basic essence of who you are. So my will is independent of how I use it. Okay, it exists separate of my thinking. And if I had a body, it would exist separate of what I do. My will is a priori. It's the first existence of who and what I am. Okay, what's that get me? I'm still floating along in my little black void. All I have is my mind. I'm thinking. I can't see or feel. I know that my will is my own. I'm the only one that can control it. Even if there are other wills floating around here. I'm in a vat of wills, but we can't perceive each other. We can't know that we're in a vat of wills. I know that my will is my own. Only I possess it. If I didn't, if somebody else possessed my will, I'd hear them thinking in my own head because they'd be exercising my own will. So it'd be like the Borg. I'd hear a hive mind. I'd hear all these voices at one time. I don't. So even if other wills exist, I exist. So it's possible that other wills exist. Even if I exist, I can't know it at this point. I'm in my vat. But I know that my will is mine. Got to make a note here. I control it. I have, in the fact that I control my will, that it's mine, I have property in my will. That's what property is. It's something I possess, something that's mine, that I control, something to which I have a just claim to, something that I can claim. It's mine. I possess it. It's intrinsic to my being, my essence, my will. I'm entitled to it. Okay. Now we'll expand on that a little bit next week. If I'm entitled to my will, I'm entitled to use it because it's mine. And I can use it, exercise it, do with it whatever I want to do. Therefore, I'm also responsible for how I use it. If you are, you possess your will, your thinking, your thoughts, nobody else controls it. So how you use it is solely, you're the source of what it does, of what your will does, or any ramifications from it. And we'll expand on this when we put a body to our will. But you're responsible for what you think and how you feel. That's your responsibility. Nobody else controls your will. Nobody else controls how you feel, how you think, what you want to do. Nobody. So there's nobody else that can be responsible for you. Well, this means there's no such thing as corporate rights, and we'll get to that eventually in the course of this discussion. But it also means there's no such thing as corporate responsibility. So this idea of collectivism is already a no-go. Because even if I suddenly could hear all the other wills around me floating in the void, that still wouldn't mean that they possess my will. They don't. So that still wouldn't mean that they're responsible for what I think. They wouldn't. They wouldn't be responsible. I am. This is why I put this up together in the black void where you're the only will floating around. Now, I know most people are going to be thinking this is boring. This is the essence. This is the very foundation of how to structure a consistent and coherent worldview. Any human being who has not done something similar to what we're doing right now is floating around in that black void. They just don't realize it. And it's one of the reasons their life tends to be less than what they want it to be. They're living a drifting life, a life with no compass, with no rudder, no anchor. I can't live that way. I'm assuming if you're here in class with me, you either can't or don't want to live that way. So I have a will. I have property in my will. It's mine. I have a right's just claim to it. And that makes me responsible for it, nobody else. Now, if I have a right to my will, and there was another will in the void with me, they would have a right to their will. I can't perceive them. I'm still sitting in this void. And I think to myself, okay, if I exist, I can't perceive anything. I'm just me. That's a reasonable assumption to think that if I exist, others exist. It's not known for sure. But if they did, if there were thousands of wills floating around in the void with me that I couldn't perceive, would they have a right to their will? Well, the answer is yes. If I have one to mine, they have one to theirs. And their right to their will is not incumbent on their intelligence or their genius or anything like that. Just the fact that they have a will. So, however we came to be, we're equal in our claim to our right in our will. Oh, so I can sit here in the void and think, if there are 1,000 wills floating in this void, we're equal. We have an equal claim to our will. We have equal rights to our will. See, I still can't perceive anything. It's just a thought experiment. So I cannot have a claim or a right to another person's will. It's theirs. I can't force them to think differently. Not in the world that I know. Not floating around in the void. So if I can't force them to think the way I want them to, if they are independently controlling their will and that makes them responsible for what they think and do, that makes me responsible for what I think and do, I cannot infringe on their will. Not justly. Because it's not mine to infringe on. It's theirs. So if I claim that I can tell you how to think or what to do and how to do it, I'm saying that your will is no longer yours, it's mine. Well, if it's mine, then I need to control it. But we've already covered that you can force me to do something if I have a body, but you can't force me to think or believe in a different way. I can still tell you there are only 4 lights, no matter how much you hurt me. So I can never have a right in your will, which means if I try to exert control over your will, I'm trying to claim something that does not belong to me. It's not mine. And if I'm responsible for my will and the things I do, I'm responsible for how I use it. And others have a right to their will and they're responsible for how they use it. Then we've just realized that we haven't created. We've just realized there is a system of right and wrong, and also of innocence. And if there's a system of right and wrong, of what I can justly do and cannot justly do, that creates a duty. I've just sitting around floating in the void. I've just deduced logically that I think, therefore I am, but thinking is not really existence. It just proves my existence, and I'm controlling my thinking. Therefore, I have a will. My will is actually the essence of my existence. It's mine. Nobody else can control it. Therefore, I have a right in it. Well, if there are others like me, then it's theirs. They have a right in theirs. So I'm responsible for what I think and do and how I use my will. They're responsible. I have a duty to use my will in such a way that I do not trample on the will of another innocent person, another innocent will. Your will being personhood. Not your body, but your will. Uh-oh. When does the will start? Well, we'll get to that abortion complication from all of this later. But what is innocent? What do I mean that I don't have a right over an innocent will? Well, a will that is operating without trampling on another person. In our little thought experiment, our little void, black void that we're floating around in, innocent would be the person or the will that's not trampling on another will. That will is operating without trampling on another, so that will's innocent. But now, what if that will somehow could influence mine and tried to do so intentionally? Tried to seize command of my will and change what I think. Now, we know they can't. That's what we've deduced. But it's irrelevant if they can or not. It's the fact that they're trying. Now, let's say that they come up with a way that can inhibit my ability to think clearly. They send thought waves into my mind, into my will, into my mind that confuses me. And I can hear their voice in my head, but I know it's not me, it's them. I hear voices in my head telling me to do things. They're trying to interfere. That person's not innocent. That will is not innocent. That will is trying to claim that which does not belong to it. Because if my will belonged to theirs, they wouldn't have to try to influence me. They could just control it because it would be theirs. But it's not theirs. They can't control it. Thus, we have a duty to other wills not to trample on their will, not on an innocent will. But what is our duty to a will that isn't innocent? Our duty applies to ourselves in this thought experiment, because there's, right now we're just assuming there might be other wills. We don't know that. So this duty would just apply to ourselves. It's incumbent upon us to keep it, to enforce it on ourselves. Internal control. Oh my gosh, we just got to the heart of the gospel right there. The keeping or violating of this duty to other wills. That's the essence of morality. That's the essence of acting or doing what is right. That's morality by a different name. That's the form and function of morality. Now, as I've derived it here today, it's universal. It would apply to all wills floating around in the vacuum, the void, whether I can perceive them or not. Everything I've deduced would apply equally to them. Now, you could come along and say, well, no, if my will is stronger than yours. But you see, that's just it. That's not the type of equal we were talking about. Now, you have a stronger will. You can impose on other wills and force them to concede. You haven't changed their will. You've done something to them that they can no longer tolerate for whatever reason. So they concede, they surrender. You did not take possession of their will. You don't know their thoughts. You have no right to it. So although you are stronger, that doesn't make you greater. Just made you stronger or more deceitful or more conniving or more wicked. But that didn't make you equal. And you still did not give you a right to that other will. So what we have is universal equality in our system of morality, because we all have the same equal claim to our will. And I cannot think of a lower common denominator here now, not dealing with human beings. All right, we've got the break coming up here. We're going to take a 3-minute break. And I don't know where, Natasha, do you know where Charlie put the 3-minute break? I don't see one. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. This will work. When we come back, we'll pick up here, the universal morality. Let's just see each other in 3 minutes. Get back in your seat. Okay, let's look at a couple of comments here real quick. I want to make sure we understand what I mean by control. Aaron Spike says, like the government controls the will of the people with the laws they institute. Just wondering. The government doesn't control the will of the people. The government controls the behavior. Okay, understand, thinking and the will are different. Behavior and thinking are different. Okay, it's the same thing. Your will controls your thinking, which tells you they're different. All right. Your thinking does not necessarily have to align with your behavior. Now, Mr. Spikes was in the military. There were many times he didn't want to do something, but he was in the military, so he did what he was told. That doesn't mean he all of a sudden wanted to do what he was being told to do. All right. This is kind of like what I'm trying to get at. And this is something I've run into a lot. And it is something that's crucially important if you want to understand where I'm going with all of this. Your thoughts are not your will. Your will controls your thinking. Your actions are not your will. Not necessarily. Now, your will might tell you to do it, but if you're doing it begrudgingly and against your will, we know this all the time, against my will, why are you actually doing it? Because at the very least, your will has weighed the options and said, okay, well, this is the least disagreeable thing to me at this point. So that's the action I'm going to take. This is what Paul means when he says submit to the government. He does not mean obey a pagan, lawless, atheistic God government. He means to submit to it. In other words, okay, you've got to keep obeying the laws of Yahweh, even if the government puts you in jail. You don't have a right to self-defense in this case. Go to jail willingly. Or the government says either renounce your faith or I'm going to send you to the lions. Well, you go to the lions singing and praising Yahweh that you're going to be chosen worthy of being a martyr. They didn't change their will. They held to their will. They kept telling them, 4 lights, Jack. Say, well, the next shock's going to kill you. Well, so be it. 4 lights. This is the thing that a lot of us have a problem with. The will that holds to what it has thought out as true and moral and just and holds to it no matter what the cost in this world, that's the virtuous, that's the moral and virtuous will. That's the pursuit of happiness. That's what the Greek philosophers were after without ever knowing about the Bible. There's a Japanese philosophical school of thought that I got to get his name and I got to put it up here somewhere in a sticky note. It's a Japanese philosopher from the 17th century, I believe, either the 15th or 17th. He would have agreed with Cicero, who was 6th century BC. Those two would have been buddies. That's because natural law exists. And that's what we're deriving here, the natural law of morality. And it means that no matter what happens in this world, if you decide to do what you're being told to do, you chose to do it. They didn't force you. When you say, well, so-and-so made me do it, what you're trying to say is I'm not responsible for my actions. That's not going to help. Your will is yours and yours alone. Nobody else can force you to make a decision. You have to do that. Now, they can influence you. We've covered that. But if you give in to the coercion or you fall for the deception or the lies, you chose to do that. You chose to go against your own will. Nobody else is responsible for that, no matter how badly they torture you or manipulate you. They're responsible for their actions. But you're not responsible for their actions, but you are responsible for how you react to it, how you respond. And this is the point that most people have the problem with. Because let's face it, folks, there's certain situations you could put me in that I'd give in quick. Because there's certain things I can't handle. Not well. There are also certain situations you could put me in where you could put me in a moral dilemma that I very well might choose death rather than to give in to what you're demanding I do. So we are all strong and weak in different areas. Some people can't stand the sound of nails going down a chalkboard. For me, it's somebody loudly chewing with their mouth open. I can't handle that. Nails on the chalkboard, hey man, all day long. It doesn't bother me. You and I all have those little pressure points, those little things that could be used against us if somebody wanted to. But that doesn't mean that it releases me from my obligation to control my will. It's mine. Nobody else has it. Nobody else controls it. Nobody else is responsible for it. So let's see where we're at. I exist because I think. It doesn't tell me anything about the nature of my existence or the world around me. It just says I exist. Well, thinking that's not the existence. Thinking is a sign of the existence. It is it's a product of my existence. So what could exist outside of my thinking? My will. That's your lowest common denominator, your will. And I know that, how are you talking about free will and claiming to be biblically based? Oh, you really need to stick with this Tuesday series until it's done. It's everything to do with it. So I exist and I have free will. What do I mean by free? There are no restraints on it. Even the moral restraints. I am free to be evil and wicked. I am free to desire things or to do things or to think things that I should not, that are not good for me. I am free to choose to try and trample on the will of everybody else around me. I can do that of my own choice. There are other living things in the world that have a will, but they seem to be confined or constrained by their nature. We'll get to that next week, because that would mean they don't have free will. And the difference between will and free will is everything. That's what makes you a moral agent. You and I have free will in that we can do anything, we can choose to do anything that we can get away with or anything we are capable of doing. My will is mine alone, mine to command. It's free. But this makes my will, I got a property right in it. I have a right in my will. And all of this together, it's something that I possess uniquely, that I control, that I have a right in, and it's free to do whatever I want. Free will. My free will is a right. So is yours. So now, where does your freedom end? Well, if you want to be just, then you recognize my free will and you don't trample it. So you are free to do whatever you want within the confines of your will, so long as you don't trample on mine. If you do that, and I do that, we are both innocent. We're righteous. We have not trampled on the claims of another. If we exercise our free will in a way that tramples on the rights and the claims of another person, now we're not innocent. What do I mean by innocent and not innocent? In other words, you're acting wrongly. You're acting outside of the confines of right reasoning. And ultimately against your own best interests. You say, well, what if I'm strong enough to dominate everybody's will? Sooner or later, everybody's going to get together and say, you know what? He's stronger than all of us put together, but he is not, individually, but he's not stronger than all of us put together. And the ants are going to rise up and squish you, grasshopper. I see that in history. So ultimately, it acts against your own best interest. That's logical. That's reasonable. So my free will is a right, something which I am entitled. If others' free will also exists and they have a right, they're entitled to it too. So how we treat each other, that creates a duty. I have a duty to control the way I use my free will. You have a duty to control yours, and that creates morality. And because we're still in that little void where we all have equal claim to our will, and it applies to any other will floating in the void. It's a universal morality. It applies to everybody, everywhere, at all times. So I think, therefore I am, will give me a sound, valid, and rational argument for the existence of a universal morality. I also have to understand the limits of what my will can do. If I'm in the void, I can say, let there be light, and there's not going to be any light. And I could say, let there be ground or earth or substance or existence, or let me have a body, and it's not going to happen. That means there are limits to what I can do. There are people who will tell me that's the limit of your will. You don't have a free will. If you had a truly free will, then you could do these things. No. That's expanding beyond the limits of what you are. Now you're wanting to make yourself out to be a god. And next week, we're going to talk about like an animal. An animal has a will, but it's not free. They're not free to do anything that they can do. And that's the point. If an animal wanted to, they could come up with a language. A horse could come up with a whole language based on how many paw hoofs, hoof beats it makes with its two different front hoofs or whatever. It could come up with a tap code. It doesn't. It's free to do that. It's within its capabilities, but it doesn't, because that's outside of free will. It doesn't have, it has a nature that does confine it. It has the ability to do it, but it'll never think of that. It's constrained. That's because it's not a moral agent. It's not responsible for its actions. And that's why the horse isn't responsible for its actions, not morally. But now you and I, just because we can't speak something into existence does not mean we're not capable of conceiving of that. We can think of the idea of speaking something into existence. You are free to conceive it. You just don't have the ability to do it. Now, people will say, well, Joe, I can think of being rich, but I don't have the ability. Oh, yes, you do. You don't have the desire to become rich. Well, Joe, stop. Some of the richest people that have ever existed started in the poorest places without education. You don't have the strength of will to do what's necessary to become rich. So do not tell me you cannot do it. Yes, it might be one of the most monumental struggles you could ever undertake. But if you wanted it bad enough, you could do it. I don't want to hear that. Say, well, Joe, I can't become Michael Jordan. No, maybe not. But you can. If you practice hard enough, you get good enough to play in the NBA. No, I can't. You want to bet? If you could get good enough to slam that three-pointer in from anywhere on that side of the court, no matter what, you're going to get in the NBA. And that is something that, as long as you have full use of your body, you can eventually learn how to do. It's just going to probably require, for some of us like me, it would require 24/7 practice and constant upkeep. We limit ourselves because it's easier to just say, and it absolves us of our responsibility to ourselves and to others. But it doesn't really absolve us. We've just decided it does. We've spoken an absolution into existence in our own world. But now that if you were able to look in on me, you could somehow look in on my will floating around in the void where I've absolved myself. You'll look from on high and say, you're still guilty, Joe. You didn't absolve yourself of anything. You just decided to wash your hands of it. This is the problem. This is the problem. Universal morality does exist. It applies to all moral agents everywhere. Everybody with free will. Now, a dog is capable of sitting at the table and eating according to etiquette manners. He could eat slower so that he doesn't make a mess with the plate. He could even learn how to hold that plate with his front paws. But he doesn't do that on his own unless you train him to do that. Now, if you train him to do that, he has bended his will to your desire to please you. It's not free will. He didn't come up with that on his own. There's a difference between this, between free will and will. You can have a will that's constrained, that has limits that are smaller than your capabilities. But a human being has almost unlimited capability. That's why the Bible, Yahweh tells the council, hey, let's go down there and break up their language, man, because otherwise they're going to be able to do anything they put their mind to. Well, they're not going to be able to become gods. I mean, they're not Mormons. Sorry, but they do believe that their God, is a man that just became so enlightened. They're very good Gnostics, really. That's what they are. That's an aside I shouldn't have run my mouth about. You have limitations. Yes. But most of them, almost all of them, are self-imposed. And they're self-imposed because we want to avoid the morality of accepting responsibility for our situation. That's how we test the strength of a will, the virtue of a will, is to how faithfully do you adhere to the things you say. It's also where hypocrisy comes from. You speak one thing, you do another. And that's because your will says, well, this is what I'd like to be, but I'm too weak to actually be that person. So, whatever. I'll pretend to be. We today, those of us who probably are listening to this show, we look at the others out there and we say, well, they're imposters. They're virtue signaling. They want to be given credit for being this moral and virtuous person, but they're not. There are rules for thee and not for me type of people. The very fact that they expect you to hold to those rules tells you they recognize that morality is universal. Because if you ever noticed, these virtue signalers always want to hold you accountable to a standard that is at least in some way recognizable through the Judeo-Christian ethic, which means that in some way they do recognize that that is the ultimate capital T truth in this universe, and they want to hold you responsible to it, but not themselves. And that's what makes them hypocrites. And they know that you're not going to hold yourself perfectly to that standard either. So it's what makes it an effective weapon against you. Not for their team, not for the lawless group. The lawless group could care less. What it does is it turns you into an outcast on your team, and it fractures your team, Team Yahweh, Team God's ultimate law. It destroys that because you if you're really wise, you go, oh crap, they're right, because you recognize your own sin. Or if you're a hypocritical believer, you go, yeah, I guess they got you there, excusing yourself, which technically puts you on the other guy's team. Not that we'd ever see that, right? Because we don't question ourselves. I do this all the time, and I get criticized by y'all and friends of mine. It's a joke. Quit being so hard on yourself. If I wasn't hard on myself, I'd be on Team Progressive. Questioning yourself and your motives and asking yourself, why did you really do that? And looking for the truth answers, the capital T truthful answers to why you did that. That's part of what puts you on Team Yahweh. Because it shows that if nothing else, you care about the ultimate objective truth, moral standard, moral clarity, adherence to it. What the scripture calls dying to self, crucifying the flesh, the desires, the wants. Your desires and wants can be nothing more than I just want to feel comfortable and I don't want hurt. Well, what are they going to tell you in the gym? No pain, no gain. Well, that's also scriptural. You don't grow without pain. So if I want to choose the path that avoids pain, that's not always the moral path. We've deduced a lot today just from I think, therefore I am. Next week, I'm going to add the body into this, and we'll deal with what a moral agent is at the same time. And we'll keep going because I'm going to get you to a logic-based universal morality. And then I'm going to show you that if you can prove that there is a sound, valid, and consistent, sound, valid, rational, coherent, consistent argument for universal morality that comes just from I think, therefore I am. You've just proven a natural law, and if you prove a natural law that governs all human interactions, you've just proven God. Huh? Yeah, stick with us to the end. It'll be a couple weeks, but stick with me. I'll show you you've just proven the creator. And not any creator, a very specific one and only one. His name is Yahweh. Because no other creator has the form and function of the one you're going to prove, or we're going to prove. Then that'll leave you with some choices to make. Which team are you going to be on? Team I'm my own God? Which is what the left is trying to do. When they tell you a man can become a woman, they're trying to change reality simply by speaking it into existence. Humans cannot do that. Angels cannot do that. No power or being known to man can do that other than the creator. All right. Any questions, comments, or anything that I need to address there, Natasha? We good?
Looks like we're good.
All right. I know that this will not be one of my most popular shows, but it's going to be one of my most favorite. And I don't care about popularity anymore. I'm coming to understand that this class is a bunch of Gideons. If you gave me 30,000 people all of a sudden, I want to wheedle it down to 300. I'll be happy with that. I want to make warriors, or encourage you to become one, spiritual and intellectual, in your own world, in your own way, so that you can become stronger in yourself. Because I actually believe that you are capable of being stronger than you think you are. Now, I don't know how strong. None of us really does. Mr. Keeley says, I want to fight, and I know what he means. Well, Mr. Keeley, you and I both know that you have to restrain yourself. Sheathe the sword and let him fight for us. That takes great strength, great discipline, great moral character. Because you have willingly adhered yourself to an ideology. And we will get to that before the end of this discussion in the next couple of weeks. I can willingly adhere myself to an ideology. Now, that ideology is it's subject to a moral evaluation. So on the left, where they want morality to be collective, there is no such thing as a collective. It doesn't exist. It's a fiction. So how can you have morality based on a fiction? You can't. But they're trying to speak that fiction into existence. It does not work that way. So I can evaluate that system and I can come up with, that doesn't work. That's an immoral system. That's why atheism, secular humanism fails. Go to go to the Road to Concord on Facebook, or the Road to Concord on X, or on the Road to Concord's blog page. And you'll see that I put up a post from the Blaze up there about the Charlie Kirk assassination has proved to us that the atheist moral system has failed. It's a good article. But I address it and set it up. I frame it for you before you read it. But they're just saying the same things I've been preaching for decades. Now, I'm showing you that logic is neutral. I can make the same argument against where I'm at right now. It's just that I don't think that counter argument to what we've done today is anywhere near as strong as the one we've just made. The one we've just made is very tight. It is sound, it's valid, it's rational, and it all comes from just one undeniable fact. I think, therefore I am. You can't get around that. Not in the human condition, you can't. Now, I preface that. You may not know your true nature. That's irrelevant. You think, well, Joe, you could just be the pigment of an imagination of the cosmic turtle who had bad lettuce today. Yes, but I still exist, even if it's just as a thought in his mind. I have control over what I think. I and I alone, not the turtle. And that's undeniable. And everything else we've done today flows naturally from that. The only argument that you can make to counter it, the only other one, no matter which it is, there are multiple. The only other one you can make, whichever one of the many there are, rests on the fact that you can justly claim the will of another human being, to control it, to possess it, to have a right to it. I reject that out of hand because it's irrational. It's illogical. Because any argument that you make that says you have a right to that would argue that somebody else has a right to yours. And you and I both know that you would deny that claim. So your hypocrisy exposes the immorality of your argument. Shows that it breaks. You break your own argument just by making it. I don't know if this is ringing with any of you. I hope it does. Stick with me for the next few Tuesdays. This is a Jimmy Zinker show, folks. I wish that we had the phones for him. He might want to call in, but I have no way to put the phones on when Charlie's away. Tomorrow, Charlie does his dissertation. I did not realize it, but it's going to piggyback onto today's show. And it's going to fit very well with what I was doing on Facebook with that group that was virtue signaling with the tragedy up in Michigan with the Mormons. No coincidences anymore. It's kind of cool that ever since I have decided I'm going to focus on what we're doing here and really, really give it my best effort, the whole week, you may not see it. I hope you do, but some of you might. But each week since that point, each week has seemed to have its own central theme. All 5 shows. And I didn't plan it that way. Just seems to be working out that way. Indirect indication that there is another will at play here in this universe, greater than ours. We love you here at the Road to Concord. We appreciate you for being here. We really thank those of you who help and support this show. We wouldn't be here without you, literally. I don't have the money to do this on my own, and I wouldn't want to. And I would not spend the time to do this if it were just left up to me. But this is my way of serving my fellow man and serving Yahweh in the process. And I just want to make sure that each and every one of you knows, whether it's $5 like we ask you to give us or $5,000, I don't care. That's that one denarius. We all get the same reward. So each of you that helps us with this show is equally valuable to us in our hearts. And we thank each and every one of you sincerely from the bottom of our heart. We ask that you pray for each other and that you pray for the country. We're going to need it. And we ask that if there's anything we can do to help you, or anything that we can teach, or any problem you think you found with what we've done, that we do ask that you email us. We need to hear from you. We don't read your minds. You control your will. And to be honest with you folks, we live in a day and an age where contacting us and communicating with us is very simple. There's no excuse not to do it if you are so led, feel so inclined to do so. I don't want to trample on your will and tell you to do it, try to force you to do something you don't want to do. That's not the point. Just that we can't serve if we don't know what you need. All we can do is what we feel led to do. To the extent that we succeed at that, praise be to Yah. To the extent that we fail, it's all on me. It's not even on Charlie or Natasha. That right there says the professor's name is Joe. So that's my fault. And I'll accept it. Love y'all. See you tomorrow. I'm going to watch Charlie's dissertation. Y'all take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there and be careful out there. Keep your heads on a swivel. Hate. The dragon and his children are running amok, and they're in a rage because their time is short. and they're trying to destroy people. They're trying to destroy Yahweh's people or anybody who aligns themselves with his name, his son's name, more than anyone else, because they've already destroyed themselves. So if you align yourself with the name of Yahweh or Yeshua, his Messiah, time to get closer to them, trust them, but also time to keep your head on a swivel. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't give in to the impulse to hate others or to separate from the world. Don't do that. Don't hide your light. Don't put it underneath a bush, a basket or a bushel, woven basket type thing. Don't do that. Be the light that others are drawn to. Choose to live the life that you wish you lived. It's that simple. Just do it. Just do it. So until we see each other again, y'all stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye. Natasha, I am.